To discuss this further, and we're now joined by a very special guest, Sujata Rao, who's the former Health Secretary. Ma'am, thanks very much for taking the time out. I want to first ask you, this is something very commonplace that we've heard almost every year. There are paper leaks, then there are protests, and then the government wakes up, and then they say that there will be reforms and we'll act. But I want to ask you first, since you've also written an editorial, and I was just going through it, you say that this is more of a bad policy issue. So why do you think it's not really lack of political will and only a bad policy outcome?
It's both. Lack of political will is what leads to a bad policy. And when I say bad policy, I meant the NEET. When I was Secretary of Health in 2010, that's when the NEET idea was mooted to us by the Medical Council of India. And it made sense for the three reasons I gave in my article that, we had graduates, we had people entering into medical college with zero knowledge of chemistry and physics and zoology. And then we had 46 exams that they could take. And that was getting to be a very harassing and a harrowing situation for students. And the capital shed fee was hitting the roof. So to address these three concerns, NEET seemed to be a brilliant idea of having one examination. But it is in the implementation that we really coppered out, And as you see, the NTAs, of course, we need some institutional mechanism to conduct these all India examinations, because obviously ministries cannot. But then the structure has proved to be completely faulty, because in 7 years, at least 70 instances of leakages, instances of wrong results, which have resulted in students committing suicide. You can't have this kind of a chaotic situation and not take any action, There's enough evidence out there that NTA has been a dysfunctional institution. Good idea, but badly implemented. And there, I think the two ministries, Ministry of Health has to review the entire concept of NEET and its structure on the one hand, because as I said, the Tamil Nadu data has really shown up that it is very discriminatory against rural and poor students who have aspirations and brilliance to be able to be good doctors. Right. And the whole public health, primary health care agenda getting affected thereby. And you have the Ministry of Education, which ought to have shown much better action in getting their NTA working well. Now they've cancelled NET. You're talking about lakhs of aspirations.
Ma'am, we'll come to all of those points. You're raising very, very critical and very, very pertinent points. But let me take off from what you said, that there is this obsession, perhaps, with everything being centralized, like one-stop solution for everything. So how is it that our politicians are not really recognizing these basic differences in a society like India, where people are coming from completely different backgrounds? And secondly, hence my question is, how can the disadvantage, the non-CBSE students follow up, and how can they be sort of brought at par with the others who are perhaps better privileged?
Basically it has to be schooling system. And we had hoped that when you have an exam like NEET, which has a certain national standard, because we had at that time compared Tamil Nadu school curriculum with, say, Andhra school curriculum and all that, and found different levels of the state curriculums itself to be, of different, a lot of variations. And we hope that the whole school system will be improved thereby to be able to come up to the NEET standard, which was like a CBSE standard. But that didn't happen. That's because, the education is so neglected. Can you imagine? It's not a priority with any political party, leave alone the current government. Nobody bothers about school education. I'm sorry to say, but that's a fact. Budgets have been coming down in this particular government. They were not that they were very high during the previous UPA government either. So unless and until the school system improves, this leakages and these centralization, the temptation to centralize exams, to ensure that in professional colleges there's a standard output that gets into the job situation, those kind of concerns emerge because of the school system having failed. It's nothing but a governance failure, to put it clearly.
Yeah, governance failure also happening in a country when the government has been championing that we want to build for the world. So if you want to build for the world and not have your students skill, that is going to be a major problem. So I want to
Absolutely,
then ask you,
100%.
I mean, states
100%.
like Tamil Nadu have So,
Yeah.
states like Tamil Nadu have opposed NEET, understanding
Yes.
perhaps the merits of decentralization. What is then the solution to this ruckus, this problem, this rot in our system? Is it decentralization, or what are the kind of reforms that you perhaps suggest?
I would strongly urge that it should be decentralized. I'd let the states, after all, medical education, for example, is a concurrent subject. Education is a concurrent subject. So the states have as much of an authority. Let them be able to decentralize, linked up, like Tamil Nadu had an act where the person passing out of school or based on the marks obtained could get into the medical college. And that's how it was when I was growing up also. We never had these central exams and qualifying exams. So if every state could do that, if you want a certain standard for an all India basis, I've always felt that there could then be a qualifying licensing examination, that if a Tamilian wants to work in Delhi, I need to make sure that he's of a particular standard which is satisfactory. I could always then conduct an exam, which if he's interested to come and work in Delhi, he takes that kind of an exam, So these options are very much available. These are being done in UK also. So, there are country experiences, and this committee is whoever is coming up should look at these different options. But this is a job of the NMC and the Ministry of Health to have structured the entry admission policy for medical education in a much better fashion. We brought out a policy, I admit, but in implementation, it has turned out to be flawed. I don't see why we can't go back and go to the drawing board and retrofit it, looking into what the data is showing now. Now, the whole coaching industry, that is extraordinarily expensive.
Ma'am, when you say, let me interject at this point and ask me to sort of, if you could elaborate a bit further on how is it the responsibility of the health ministry and not as much as the education ministry? Could you please focus a bit on that?
Because the education ministry is only conducting an examination, and it is getting people to evaluate those questions, setting question papers, evaluating them, and giving out the scores. The Ministry of Health is the one who is concerned with what sort of a doctor are we producing for our system of healthcare. I'm interested in public health. I'm interested in strengthening primary healthcare. And I don't want a very urbanized person who's coming from a very high-end schools. They invest a lot of money on coaching centers. Their aspiration is to work in corporate hospitals or go abroad. They're not interested to go and work in Jharkhand in a primary healthcare center. And this is what Tamil Nadu has shown. When they get rural students, get into medical colleges, they don't know English that well, they know Tamil very well, and they are brilliant enough to understand the subject. They passed all the qualifying exams. They tend to stay in the primary healthcare system. So that's the reason why Tamil Nadu health indicators are so much advanced. I mean, they're the best in the country today, is largely because they had these feeder categories for the primary healthcare system, and public health. Whereas if you have just on merit alone, all these so-called meritorious students educated in urban areas, English medium, their aspirations are corporate hospitals and to go abroad. They're not really working in the public health system of the country. So these issues, Ministry of Health understands the implications of what kind of courses and what kind of backgrounds that we need from the people that we want to, get into the medical colleges. So this is something that the Ministry of Health has to really reflect
Right,
upon.
ma'am, I'll ask you two very quick questions because we're completely running out of time. I want to also focus on this issue of infrastructure. Several experts have stated that the NTA does not really have adequate infrastructure to sort of conduct these exams where you have students coming in millions. If you could quickly respond to that, and then one final question I'll ask you.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, from what I've heard of the NTA, because that comes under the education department, they hardly have 8 to 10 people. Now, these are specialized areas, NEET is for medical colleges, engineering is a different discipline. And then for NEET, they had about 4,000 centers. They need to have a large number of supervisors to go and exactly see whether the centers have the CCTVs. You've seen the reports, how inadequately prepared the centers were. Now, when you have a flawed structure which is not able to ensure the integrity of the exam, then naturally the incentive to cheat and to have these kind of irregularities occurring regularly will be happening. So I don't think they are well structured, the NTA, and that requires reform. As the minister said, that high-level committee may come out. But right now, the students, 25 lakh students are unhappy. You address that first. Are you going to have a re-examination? Are you going to redo? The Supreme Court order is inadequate, in my opinion, not giving a status quo and saying, let counseling happen. What if the later on they change the order? All this has to be redone again. So, I think there is an immediate, sharp response I expect from the government, and the high-level committee takes on for medium-term reforms and long-term reforms. That's very good, and I'm happy about that. But that's not going to address today's problem. I have friends' daughters who have passed the exam and they're crying.
Ma'am, I barely have a minute to go. I barely have a minute to go before we wrap up. And I want to finally ask you in 30 seconds or in a minute, if you could just explain what at the moment should be the priority of the agencies of the judiciary to resolve this crisis, really, because there have been grace marks given, and now the Supreme Court is also coming up with, its own order also, which you don't seem to be agreeing with.
Yeah, I think it's very harsh for me to say that, I know, but I think a retest is required, because there's no way on earth, no government can say here cheating took place, there leakage took place, and just if you tie up these two places in Bihar and some Gujarat, things are okay. You don't know where all the papers were leaked out and where the cheating took place, So it's unfair to those meritorious students who have passed the exam. They might lose out, and those who have had the privilege of having the papers beforehand getting through. 67 people got perfect scores. It's humanly impossible. So, I think they have to do a retest, but after thorough preparation, it's a very tense moment for NTA, but they have to go through the drill of ensuring every point, every node is plugged, and ensure that no way of any leakage takes place this time. I think a retest has to be done.
Right, we do hope so. We do hope so that there are no leakages in future, and finally there is a solution. There is a plugging of those, those holes which persist as far as our education system is concerned, as far as the systemic rot is concerned. On that note, thanks very much, ma'am, for sharing your valuable thoughts and valuable insights on this very crucial issue. Thanks very much for joining us, and thanks viewers for joining us this evening. Lots more coming up. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned to ET Now.